Thanks everyone for joining us tonight. Tonight's program is the Putah Creek Nestbox Highway, 25 years and 18,000 fledglings. Our speakers are Amanda Kindel and Maggie Borda. Amanda is a research biologist at the UC Davis Museum of Wildlife and Fish Biology. She received her Bachelor's of Science degree from UC Davis in 2021 and has been affiliated with the museum since 2023. Her responsibilities encompass multiple projects, including coordinating the terrestrial biomonitoring program on Putah Creek and managing avian and herpetological surveys within the California Delta, analyzes bat data from local ecosystems, and contributes to specimen curation and preparation at the museum. Maggie Borda is the Putah Creek biologist at UC Davis Museum of Wildlife and Fisheries Biology. She earned her BS in Wildlife, Fish, and Conservation Biology from UC Davis in 2024 and has been with the museum since. Maggie manages the Putah Creek Nestbox Highway, supervises interns, and bands nestlings. Outside nesting season, she works on data analysis, terrestrial biomonitoring along Putah Creek and in the California Delta, and manages manuscripts and reports for the Nestbox project. So thank you both for being with us tonight, and you have the floor.
All right, thank you very much for having us. We'll share our screen and get going. All right, so I'm Amanda Kindel. And
I'm Maggie Borda.
And tonight we're going to be talking to you all about the Putah Creek Nestbox Highway. This is a project that's been going on for 25 years, so we have a lot of cool things to share with you all and some future research directions. So this project was started back in 2000 by Dr. Melanie Truan as part of her PhD dissertation. She noticed that there weren't any breeding Western bluebirds in the area and had this idea to bring them down from the coastal foothill range by adding nest boxes along Putah Creek. And since then, it has been wildly successful. We have brought back Western bluebirds and have since had over 18,000 fledglings of several different species that also like our boxes. And yeah. This is just a little graphic of the bluebirds starting up in the Lake Berryessa area all the way down towards Davis. So as time goes on, you can see the population increase. And then to present, this year and this past breeding season in 2024, we had 307 bluebird fledglings, and this was on all of our nest boxes on Putah Creek, but also including our Davis Nestbox Network nest boxes. So some overall stats for the project. Since it has started, we have banded 18,032 nestlings and adults. We have trained at least 250 undergraduate interns on songbird monitoring, handling, measuring, and banding. So every year during the nestbox season, we get about 40 interns that help out with the project. So it's pretty cool. It's a really cool learning experience for them too. And we've established 10 different trail systems with a current total number of nest boxes that's greater than 200. And this project is very important for our local songbirds because the birds that nest in our boxes are secondary cavity nesters, which means they have to nest in a cavity and they can't make the cavity for themselves. So the cavities are usually made by other birds like woodpeckers, and these cavities are a limited resource due to land management practices and the influx of invasive species like European starling and house sparrows also liking to occupy these cavities. But we designed our nest boxes to exclude European starling by making the nest box hole smaller. And we also are able to frequently monitor our nest boxes that allow us to exclude house sparrows. So every week during April to August, we go out to every single one of our boxes and check on nest progress, the number of eggs, nestlings, fledglings, and check for any unwanted species like house sparrow. And then once we have nestlings, we are able to measure and band them. This is just a little overview of all of our different trail systems in this area. So starting up, I think it's on the right side of your screen, probably.
The left side.
Left side is the Interdam site, which is closest to Lake Berryessa. And then downstream all the way down to MBN, which is at South Fork Preserve. And then we also have a little icon of the Davis Nestbox Network. And each one of these little icons has about 20 nest boxes.
So now we'll just do a little intro to 5 of the most common species that we have on the highway. So in order from most common to least common in our boxes, we have tree swallows, western bluebirds, northern house wrens, ash-throated flycatchers, and white-breasted nuthatches. So just a little more detail on our tree swallows. They are found in pretty diverse habitat types. They really just need water and nesting cavities that are nearby. And this is really important because they forage for insects above the water. As for their nests, what we look for in our boxes for a tree swallow nest is a base made of grasses, and then they line their nest cup with lots and lots of feathers. Bluebirds also use grass in their nests, but tree swallow nests generally have more messy grass than a western bluebird nest. Also, something really cool about tree swallow nests is they're always hunting for those feathers during the nesting season. So sometimes if you stand like right outside their nest cavity and then you drop a feather, they might like swoop in to catch it and then add it to their nest. And their eggs are white to pale pink. They usually lay 4 to 6 eggs per clutch. Their nestlings have super tiny legs, so we just give them one USGS service band. And the young tree swallows don't have any green or blue in their plumage, unlike the adults.
So for the Western Bluebird, the whole reason we started this project, they prefer open woodland areas for nesting, and they also like wooded riparian areas. And we've also found that they like to nest in orchards. So one of our sites is like half riparian and then half orchard, and they really like those orchard trees. They forage on the ground for insects. So you'll probably see them hopping around in the grass, pulling up worms. Their nests are similar to tree swallows in that they're made of grass, but they generally will weave the grasses more neatly, and they don't add any feathers. And their eggs are blue. Sometimes they're white, but they're usually blue. And they usually lay about 4 to 6 eggs per clutch. And their nestlings are sexually dimorphic at banding age, which means we can tell the males and females apart for the most part. Sometimes they're like a little in between, but we generally can tell them apart. The males have a bluer wing, and the females have a green-blue or gray wing. And the young Western bluebirds also have spots on their backs and chest. And this is just a photo to show how we can tell the birds apart when they're at banding age. So these are 2 Western bluebird nestlings that are from the same clutch. And the one on the left with the deeper blue is the male, and the one on the right with like the greenish blue is the female. And this is a little graph to show how some of our Western bluebird pairs will have more than 1 clutch per season. And so the first peak in the graph that you see is from like the first clutch, all of the fledglings leaving the nest. That's like usually the biggest like peak in their nesting season because most of the birds do 1 clutch. And then the lucky ones that have enough resources go in for the second one. And so the smaller peak is the second clutch where you see like another little hump that shows the second wave of nesting.
Next, we have our northern house wren. So these guys like scrubbier, kind of bushy habitat. They really like when their nest box points towards like some bushes or a tree that has some nice sticks for them to sit on outside the nest box. They really like to stand there and sing a lot in front of their box. And nest boxes can expand their range. So areas where they aren't usually found, if you put a nest box there, they might end up there because they have that nest box available. As you can see from the second picture, their nests are made of lots and lots of sticks, and then they line their little nest cup with feathers. House wrens also do this really cool thing where they create dummy nests. So the male house wren will create a bunch of little like partial nests, and then the female will pick her favorite, and then they will complete that nest and lay their eggs there. Sometimes their boxes are so full of sticks that we actually can't get in there to ban the nestlings. And we think this might be an adaptation to predator deterrence. So if they fill the box with enough sticks, we can't get in there, but also predators like jays or raccoons, whatever, also can't get in there and get to their nestlings. House wren eggs are very round, small, and super delicate, so we have to be really careful when we're handling them. And they usually lay about 5 to 8 eggs per clutch. But in this picture, they actually laid 9, which is unique. Their nestlings are really, really cute. They are very jumpy at banding age, so we have to keep a really good handle on them when we're banding them. And sometimes they'll also chirp at us when we're banding them.
The next up is our ash-throated flycatcher. This is a neotropical migrant, which means they fly down to the tropics every winter, and then they come back here in the spring and breed in our nest boxes. And nest boxes available in their habitat can expand their range. These birds are very versatile in arid habitats, and they forage by catching insects in midair, aka fly catching. And their nests are lined with fur, and they get this fur from a variety of sources. Sometimes from dead mammals that they find, sometimes alive ones, sometimes mammals scat. So their nests generally smell interesting. They also will start nesting later in the season than our other birds because they have to fly all the way from the tropics back here. And because of this, they end up a lot of the times nesting on top of other species' older nests. Their eggs are white to off-white with a purple and red streaking, and they usually lay 4 to 6 eggs. Their nestlings are super cute and probably one of my favorite to band. They will snap their bill at you while you're banding them, and then their parents will also like swoop in and snap their bill at you. It's pretty cute.
And finally, we have the white-breasted nuthatch. We usually just get a couple nests of them each year. For habitat, they prefer deciduous forest, sometimes coniferous forest, and they like to forage and store their food in the bark of trees. So you can often see them hopping around, often upside down on the trees, like searching in the bark for the food that they've stored. They build really nice nests. The base is made of bark and moss, and then they line it with fur, similar to the ash throats. But we can tell the difference just from the nest a lot of times because the white-breasted nuthatches nest a lot earlier in the season than the ash-throated flycatchers. If we do get nests of them this year, they'll probably be nesting pretty soon. They generally lay 4 to 6 eggs that are white with reddish spotting. Their nestlings are really neat. They show defense mechanisms when we're banding them. They kind of like extend their wings and then move like side to side, kind of, in a similar way that the adults do when they're trying to avoid predation. And then these are just 3 uncommon species that we have gotten in the boxes before, but are pretty rare for us to get on the highway. So we have Bewick's wren, oak titmouse, and chestnut-backed chickadee. Last year, though, Sackett Ranch, which is a site just across from our most upstream site at Interdam, did get a box of oak titmice, so that was very exciting.
So this is a little pie chart that shows all of the different birds we've banded in the duration of this project. So from 2000 to 2024, and this is nestlings and adults. And so the largest slice in this pie is tree swallows. We have banded 9,801 tree swallows since this project has started, which means next year we're going to get to 10,000 tree swallows, which is insane. And I think we should have like a little 10,000 tree swallow celebration thing. And then the next most common or the next most abundant is our Western Bluebird with over 4,000 banded. And then house wren with 2,645. Then we got our ash throat. And then finally we have our white-breasted nuthatch with 128. And this graph is showing the species composition of our nestlings on Putah Creek. So it's going from most upstream to downstream site. So INT is for Interdam, and that's our most upstream site. It's just below Lake Berryessa. And then MBN/SFB is for South Fork Preserve, and that's like our last site before the YOLO bypass area. And so here you can see all the different species distributions along the creek, and each site has its own variation in species assemblage. And this can be from a variety of factors, from like habitat or competition or food and resource availability. So we had some changes in our species assemblage recently because we had this wildfire at Interdam, which was pretty significant. It wiped out a lot of the trees and ended up burning 7 of our boxes. Luckily, it was after nesting season, and so we didn't have any birds in the boxes, and we were able to replace all the boxes, but it did significantly change the habitat structure and the availability of like woody vegetation and small trees. And so since that fire at Interdam, we've only had tree swallows. And so this is a graph of species composition from last year. And so Interdam, we had like 118 fledglings of tree swallows and nothing else nested, nothing else even tried. It's crazy. So we're hoping in the next few years, as like vegetation regrows, that maybe we'll get some more species in that area. And we have been seeing some other species like ash-throated flycatcher and Western Bluebird investigating the boxes, but they haven't quite been able to outcompete the tree swallows yet, because tree swallows are very good at defending their boxes. But maybe next year, we'll see. And then Diversion Dam, which is DBD, the one right below Interdam, is one of our most diverse sites. We get a ton of house wrens and bluebirds and other species there too. And then South Fork is also one of our most diverse sites.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about nest box warfare. This is one of the future things we hope to do some more research on at the museum. So we know that our nest boxes are a limited resource, which creates competition both within species and between all of our species on the nest box highway. As you saw before, species composition at each site varies from year to year. And each of our species shows a different variety of agonistic and defensive behaviors. So here we just have a chart of all of our fledgling species composition from the last 10-ish years. So as you can see, tree swallows are really dominating at the top. They've always been our most abundant species in terms of fledglings. And then you can see that about 10 years ago, northern house wrens were more abundant in our boxes than western bluebirds. And then in 2018, something happened and that switched. The western bluebirds kind of overtook them. And we'll get into that a little bit more later. And then our ash-throated flycatchers and white-breasted nuthatches have been pretty stable over time. So we'll start with a little bit about the ash-throated flycatchers. So as we talked about earlier, they arrive later in the season after most birds have already started nesting. And we've found that over a quarter of their nests on the highway are actually started by a different species. So the photo on the top left used to be a tree swallow nest. So a tree swallow built their nice grassy, feathery nest and started laying eggs. And then an ash-throat came along and decided that that nest was theirs, and they started putting down fur and laying their own eggs. And they also do that to western bluebirds. So in the bottom left, we have a nest from last year from our old Davis Road site. One week we went, there was a nice grassy bluebird nest with 2 bluebird eggs. And then the following week, 2 bluebird eggs had disappeared and they were replaced with 1 ash-throat egg and a little bit of fur. So we suspect that the ash-throat was tampering with the eggs of the bluebird and maybe decided they wanted the nest box for themselves and then took those western bluebird eggs and threw them out of the box. So the following week we came back and there were 4 ash-throat eggs and 1 bluebird egg. It seems like the bluebird decided to give it one last shot, try and lay their eggs in that box, but the ash-throat won. So it ended up incubating 4 of its own eggs plus 1 bluebird egg. 3 of the ash-throat eggs ended up hatching, as you can see in that bottom left picture. And then the bluebird egg and 1 of the ash-throat's eggs didn't hatch. But back in 2017, we had something very similar happen where an ash throat ended up taking over a bluebird nest and incubating eggs of both species. And then we actually had ash throats hatch alongside one bluebird, which was pretty cool. So we had an ash throat successfully hatch and then partially raise a bluebird chick along with its own nestlings. We didn't leave the bluebird there to fledge. We moved the bluebird to a different nest in case the ash throat realized that this baby was not their own and decided to stop feeding it. But all 3 babies ended up successfully fledging, which is pretty cool. So here we just have a little chart showing how the species breakdown of ash throat nest takeovers happen. So on the left, we have all of the ash throat nests that we've ever had on the creek. So you can see that most of the time, 73% of the time, they build their own nest from scratch. But then 27% of the time, they are taking over nests from other species. So on the right, the smaller pie chart there is showing which species they're generally taking those nests over from. Usually these nests are inactive, like they've either been partially built and then abandoned, or maybe the nestlings got predated so that nest isn't being used anymore, or maybe the nestlings already fledged. So the nest isn't being used anymore, and then the ash throat comes in, adds some fur, and then raises their own nestlings there. But 15% of the nest takeovers are actively laying or incubating eggs. So that is like the cases that we just talked about with the incubating the Western Bluebird eggs along with their own eggs. And these numbers are likely an underestimate of takeovers because we can't always confirm whether or not an ash throat has taken over a nest or not. So another aggressive behavior that ash throats do is bill snapping. So we got this video from our nest cam footage a few years ago. So you can see that she's snapping her bill towards the front of the box, and that is a territorial behavior. It's also seen in the closely related great crested flycatcher, which is like the eastern U.S. counterpart to the ash throat.
Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the white-breasted nuthatch nest defense. And so last year, when we had a couple of boxes of white-breasted nuthatch, one of our interns was able to take some really
this is your cousin Maggie's colleague.
white-breasted nuthatches on the nest box. And so in this series of photos, you can see a nuthatch with an insect in its bill, and it has crushed the insect and is now smearing it around the borders of the box. And so this works to mask the smell of the nestlings by smearing those insect juices all over, and can help protect their nestlings from predation from creatures that might be smelling out the nestlings. Another type of defensive tactic that white-breasted nuthatches use is a distraction display. So this is kind of what Maggie was talking about earlier with the nestlings when we banned them, about how they like lift their wings and sway side to side. So we were able to witness this with the adults, where they're trying to defend their box, where they would lift their wings, sway side to side, and it's supposed to startle and deter the potential nest predators. And tree swallows have a really super way of defending their nest boxes, where they just sit in the entrance of the nest box and do not move. Most of the photos that we have of tree swallows are of them doing this specific behavior. So we have like probably hundreds of photos of tree swallows just sitting in the cavity. They do a really great job. They've been very successful in the creek. They're really good competitors, and they will often just sit there. And sometimes we'll walk up to check the box and they'll just be sitting there the whole time and we can't check the box. And that is what it is. And sometimes one pair of tree swallows will defend more than one nest box to prepare for their second nesting attempt. So they'll be able to immediately start laying right after their first clutch of nestlings has fledged. Western bluebirds don't show any like specifically unique defense mechanisms like our other guys do, but they are frequently very competitive with our tree swallows and trying to vie for those good boxes because they share similar preferences in the boxes that they choose often. But some interesting trends about Western bluebirds is the number of Western bluebird fledglings on the creek has been in a slight decline for the past few years, and this could be due to competition from tree swallows and northern house wrens, but it also could be due to changes in habitat suitability. But interestingly, we have been seeing an increase in the number of Western bluebirds on the Covell Greenbelt, which is one of our Davis Nestbox Network sites, which is like a more urban Nestbox trail. And we'll talk a little bit more about the Covell Greenbelt site in a little bit. But we found that some of the males that are now breeding pairs on the Covell Greenbelt were originally banded on Putah Creek. So they were banded in the boxes on the creek and then decided to move on over to the Covell Greenbelt. So it'll be interesting to see what happens from there. So this graph is kind of just extracted from the graph we showed you a few slides ago with northern house wren and western bluebird. And so here you can see how in 2018, their species, the number of fledglings that they produce per year switched in 2018. And western bluebird took over northern house wren. But now, towards the end in 2023, we've started to see an increase in northern house wren and a decrease in western bluebird. So next year, it's going to be really interesting to see how they compete with each other. So now to talk a little bit about our evil little house wrens. House wrens have pretty unique defensive and competitive characteristics that they use. They are known to destroy eggs and nestlings of competing house wrens or of other species. So they'll sneak into nest boxes that are occupied by other pairs and puncture tiny little holes into the eggs, which causes the eggs to fail and then the parents to abandon the nest. And then the house wrens will move in and take over and lay their eggs. But last year, we also saw house wrens sneak into a nest of bluebirds and proceed to kill all of the bluebird nestlings and then take over the nest and move in. So they're pretty evil and kind of sneaky, but I guess gotta do what you gotta do. On the other side, house wrens, their fledgling production has been decreasing since 2016. We had one site, it's the green one, it's Russell Ranch, RRR. That was like a big stronghold for house wrens for a while. And then in 2016, there's this huge decline in the number of fledglings produced. And we currently think that it's due to how land management practices changed at that site. So they started clearing out a lot of like the woody foliage and like scrubby debris and stuff to help with like fire safety reasons. And house wrens love that woody debris and scrubby foliage. And so it seems that they've probably moved on into different areas because of that. And then we were a little concerned about our house wrens reduction in fledglings. And so we looked into it. We have about 20 years also of point count data on Putah Creek at each of our sites that have nest boxes. So we are able to compare the number of house wrens that are detected at our sites. So these are adult house wrens that were counted in the spring by people doing point counts. And it doesn't seem that they're in severe decline. It just seems like there's like the general year-to-year variability in the number of house wrens on the creek. So it seems that probably our house wrens are still doing fine in the area, but they've just been nesting less in our boxes, whether that be from competition or just they're able to find natural cavities elsewhere.
So now we'll talk a little bit about competition and predation in our non-bird species on the creek. So on the left, you can see a rat jumping out of one of our nest boxes. Sometimes rats do get in and make little leaf nests in there, and then we have to evict them. I think the record number for how many rats we've gotten in a box is last year there were 4 rats in one box. There is a video of that on our Instagram if you want to scroll way back. It's pretty cool to see each rat jump out of this little nest box. But they are invasive, so we do have to kick them out and make room for our native birds. And then we also have invasive European paper wasps. So they build these paper nests in our nest boxes, and then we need to remove those for the safety of the nestlings and also for the safety of us monitoring the boxes, because we do reach our hands in there to grab things. And finally, we get snakes in our boxes now, apparently. Last year, we found a California king snake. You can see its tail hanging out of the nest box in the photo on the right-hand side. Yeah, a California king snake got in this box and was midway through eating a nestling when the team of interns went out to check the box. We also had 2 other clutches mysteriously disappear in the same area around the same time. So we suspect that this king snake learned that it can find food in the boxes and then go in and eat all of our nestlings. But we do try to minimize predation and any negative effects from our non-native species. So one of the things we do is we try to hang boxes away from the trunks of the trees. This makes it harder for critters like rats to jump onto the box and then be able to get inside that hole. And then we also reduce the size of the entrance hole. So you can see in the bottom left picture, the entrance hole to that box is really big. Sometimes woodpeckers really like our boxes and then they make the entrance holes bigger. So then, as you can see in the bottom right, we put a metal plate on the box to reduce the size of the entrance hole so just our native birds can get in. We really want to avoid creating any ecological traps that might harm our birds.
Speaking of a safer home, we've been learning some really cool things about the Davis Nestbox Network and the Cobo Greenbelt specifically, because it seems that our birds are doing really well there. So since this Nestbox Trail was established in 2019, we've had 117 tree swallow fledglings and 420 Western Bluebirds fledglings. And this trail system starts in Community Park, kind of by the library, and then goes all the way to North Star Pond. We have 20 boxes out there right now. So there's some interesting patterns going on out there. So for the first part, egg to fledge is a way that we can look at how successful and how successful each pair of bluebirds is at raising their young and like the survivability of the young. So egg to fledge is the ratio of how many of the birds, how many of the eggs that were laid actually hatch and then end up fledging from the box. So on the graph on the left, the Cobo Greenbelt is the little squares, and you can see that their egg to fledge ratio is way higher, which means that of all the eggs that are laid, more of them have been hatching and fledging from the boxes than they have been on Putah Creek. So Putah Creek in like 2019, they had just above 50% of the birds, of the eggs that were laid actually fledged. But on the Cobo Greenbelt, like 90% of them did. And that pattern has been pretty consistent across the now 6 years that we've had that trail, where like the Cobo Greenbelt's just crushing it in terms of survivorship. And then just for nestling survival in general, so this is of the eggs that hatched, how many of them survived to fledging. And so that is also significantly higher on the Cobo Greenbelt than it is on the Putah Creek Nestbox Highway, across all the years that we've had boxes out there. We have a few different theories for why this is happening. The main one that we're thinking of right now is that the Cobo Greenbelt is like an urban trail system, so it's surrounded by grass that is watered year-round. And this can provide our birds with different insects available and can also provide more stable temperatures, as well as more shade to prevent them from getting so hot later in the summer. And then we also think that there's a lower predation rate on the Cobo Greenbelt, because we definitely don't have snakes slithering down the paths getting into our boxes out there, like we do on Putah Creek. Yeah, we don't really see that many signs of predation out there, but there are a few things that we're looking into about this project. So there's a few grad students, Mary Badger, Megan McDonald, and Alana Luzio, who are doing this really cool study by comparing the Cobo Greenbelt fledglings and nests to the Putah Creek nest boxes of our Western Bluebirds. And so they are taking poop samples from the birds while they're being banded and looking at the different types of insects that the parents have been feeding the birds and seeing how that correlates with their body mass at banding size and how successful the parents are at raising their young. And so more to come with that. It's going to be really cool to figure out like what specifically is driving these patterns. But right now it seems like Cobalt Greenbelt place to be. Another cool pattern that we've been seeing on the Cobalt Greenbelt is the first egg date. Like this, so the first egg date is the day in which the first bird lays the first egg. And so in 2019, the first egg date on the Putah Creek Nestbox Highway was still earlier than the Cobalt Greenbelt, and same in 2020. But since 2021, the Cobalt Greenbelt has been significantly earlier in the first egg date than Putah Creek Nestbox Highway. And this year, we've had our earliest bluebird egg yet. On March 13th, we had one bluebird egg in the Cobalt Greenbelt box number 3, which is pretty cool. We also checked the box again today, and the photo on the left is from that box. There are now 3 eggs. Yeah, so it's the earliest record that we've had of any bluebird on Putah Creek or in the Cobalt Greenbelt. And there are some like interesting things going on with that though, because just because they're laying earlier doesn't mean they're surviving better. We've actually seen that the survivorship of the eggs that are laid earlier is lower than the ones that are laid in like a more normal time period. So there could be something going on in that area that is tricking the birds into thinking that it is time to lay their eggs when it in fact is not, because there aren't enough resources available for them yet. But it'll be interesting to see what the insect project comes up with, because that might help us figure out what's going on with that. And then this is just showing the different fledglings that we have in the Cobalt Greenbelt. So even though I've only been talking about Western Bluebirds, we also have tree swallows. But it is mostly Western Bluebirds. The tree swallows hang out in like 3 boxes that are over by North Star Pond, but they are there and they're doing great.
So one of our current research projects is on ash-throated flycatcher nesting behavior. As we talked about before, ash-throated flycatchers are neotropical migrants that arrive on Putah Creek in the spring, and they are our 4th most common species on the highway. However, little is currently published on their nesting behavior, but we have about 25 years worth of data about all of their nesting behavior. So we're working on compiling that into a manuscript right now, which is pretty exciting. So these are just a few of the things we've learned. On the creek, they start building their nests in late April and early May. Here, they only raise 1 clutch per season, but in other areas, they've been known to raise 2. Average first egg date on the creek is May 24th, with about 13 days of incubation and usually about 4 eggs, but we've had anywhere from 1 to 8 eggs in a clutch. We've also had a few recaptures and resightings of birds that we've banded on the creek. And from our limited information that we have right now, it seems like hatchier birds disperse. So where the ash-throated flycatchers hatch is not where they stay as adults. But once they come back as adults, the adult birds do have site fidelity. So once they come back as adults, they go to the same site year after year, but it is not the same site that they hatched at. We've also been noticing that they have lower productivity in our nest boxes over time. So over the years, they've been laying fewer eggs, having fewer nestlings and fledglings than they used to. And it also looks like from some preliminary population analysis that they have been declining on the creek over the last several years. So this is just a chart showing the proportion of our nest boxes on the creek that the ash-throated flycatchers use each year. So as you can see at the beginning of the project, they were using a lot more, up to like 20% of our boxes were ash-throated flycatchers. And then more recently, it's been closer to only 5% of our boxes have ash-throated flycatchers in them. Something else that we've seen is that clutches that are initiated later in the season are smaller, have fewer eggs. We have a couple of theories as to why this might be. Later in the season, there could be fewer food resources around to maintain a larger clutch. And there could also potentially be more breeding pairs present and competing for those resources. So more there's more time for more pairs to migrate up from the tropics and start using the valuable breeding area. And then this is just a little timeline of the growth of our ash-throated flycatchers. So you can see how they go from 1 to 2 days old, up to 6 days old. They're getting more feathers, 9 days old. They really have those pin feathers coming in. And then at banding age at about 11 days old. And that's the last time that we handle them before they fledge. So one of the things we did was in 2019, we had a nest cam project. So in the middle picture, you can see a nest box, and we fitted it with a special roof that fits a trail cam. So every time there was movement inside the box, it would record a video and take a picture. So you can just see some of the pictures around the screen there. And then from this, we were able to get some really cool information. We got more precise hatch and fledge dates because we usually have to estimate those during our weekly monitoring. We got some information on nestling diet, parental care, and finally nestling condition and development as they grow. So now I just have a few videos from those nest cams to share with you. So first, this is an adult bird incubating the eggs. So you can see she's kind of like adjusting herself on the nest, making sure her eggs stay warm. And then here we have the nestlings being fed what looks like a moth at about 6 days old. You can see they're already doing that classic bird begging behavior. And then this is just a fun one. It kind of looks like these two siblings are bickering with one another. And then this is them the day before they fledge. So we usually don't get to see them right before they fledge because it's not good for them to be handled close to fledging age. They might fledge prematurely before they're ready to actually leave the nest. And then this is the other clutch that we took videos of. So these are the babies on hatch day getting fed by mom. You can see that one of the eggs still hasn't hatched yet. And then this is them just a few days later. So you can see they're begging like crazy already. And then a few days later, now their eyes are open, they're getting more feathers, and they were banded on this day. So if you look closely, you can see those bands on their legs. And then this is the day before the first one fledged. So you can see they almost don't fit in the nest box anymore. And they're almost full, like real birds now, which is exciting. And then on this day, one of them had already fledged, but there's still 3 left in the box, still begging for food from mom. And it's very difficult for all 4 of them to fit in the box at this point.
Now I'm going to talk a little bit about our color banding and resighting program. So one of the big initiatives that we've got going on right now is trying to get as many resighting reports on our birds as possible, because color banding can help us keep track of all of our nestlings over time. So we band each clutch of birds with a unique band combination of colors. And this color band combination comes from this massive Excel sheet that we cycle through every 6 years. But each box gets a specific color combination. So like all the nestlings from one box will have the same color combination. And if someone were to see this bird from this box again, we can figure out where the bird hatched and how old the bird is. And we can also figure out some other really cool things, like if this bird has had a nest before, if the bird has been successful in finding a mate and raising their young, or if they've moved from certain boxes or sites. And the species that we banned on Putah Creek and also on the Davis Nestbox Network are Western Bluebirds, Northern House Wrens, ash-throated flycatchers, and white-breasted nuthatches. We don't put color bands on our tree swallows because their legs are too small, but they do get service bands. And so this photo on the right is of our adult male Western Bluebird. We named him Tufty. And his band combination was orange over black on the left and service on the right. And this guy was resighted at the same nest box on Putah Creek Riparian Reserve 5 seasons in a row. And he was an excellent dad. He had a lot of clutches. He did great. But we were able to learn a lot about him because of his band combination, and we were able to see him. So far since 2013, we have resighted 320 birds with their color band combinations. And the total number of individual birds that we've resighted are 240. So this number is different because some of our birds have been reported multiple times. So people see the same bird over and over again and can report that to us. And we have received a lot of resights from community members. So far we have 93. And per species, we have 302 Western Bluebird resightings, 10 northern house wren, 4 Ashland flycatchers, and 4 white-breasted nuthatches. And last year, we were able to get a resighting, our 4th ever resighting of a white-breasted nuthatch. This male white-breasted nuthatch had a service band on his right leg. We assume he had some color bands at some point, but these guys tend to pop them off with their nice long pointy beaks. And so he only had his service band left. But one of our Nestbox interns last year, Lee Howell, was able to photograph this guy, and we were able to get a resighting of him. And this pair was able to raise a clutch of 4 chicks. And so we really need your help, all of you birders out there. You are probably seeing banded birds all the time, and we would love to know about them. So please use our awesome reporting portal where you can scan this QR code. We can also send the link to the reporting portal in the chat. And you can report the sighted birds, the banded birds that you see out there. So a lot of them are on the Covell Greenbelt, but we also have other sites that you can see the birds. But we've had reports from Davis, Winters, Woodland. I think there was one like out in Dixon, Stockton even. So like they're out there, they're getting about, they're getting around. So please, if you see any banded birds, report them. It would be incredibly valuable for our project. But these are some of our bird photos that have been reported by our lovely community members who have used our fan reporting portal, and also our excellent photographers. And we've used a lot of their photos for this presentation. So thank you, Kelly O'Neill and Joshua Greenfield. You guys rock. And yeah, so we've been able to learn a lot about our birds because of these resighting reports.
And a lot of our Nestbox trails are open to the public. So if you want to, you can visit a lot of our boxes. All of our publicly accessible boxes are circled in green on this map. The ones that are not circled are private property, so please don't try to go there. But the ones that you can visit include the CDFW Fishing Access 4 and 5 up on the way to Lake Berryessa, Winters Putah Creek Park, Putah Creek Riparian Reserve, Old Davis Road Restoria out by the Raptor Center, the Oak Grove in the Arboretum, of course the Covell Greenbelt, and finally South Fork Preserve. And while you're out there, if you see any banded birds, please report them to us. You can either report them through the portal, or if you prefer, our emails are on the next slide. So you're also welcome to email us with any information you have. Also, if you report a banded bird, we might be able to tell you its name, which is pretty fun because we name each and every one of our banded nestlings.
We can also tell you where it was born and perhaps how old it is, which would be fun to know. Yeah, and right now it's the best time to get out there because the birds are very active at the boxes, especially in the next couple of months. You're going to see a lot of cool birds. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you very much for coming to this talk and listening to us talk about a lot of birds for a while. If you want any more information about the museum or things that we do outside of the Nestbox Highway, you can check out our website, our Instagram if you want to see that really cool rap video, and also our Facebook. But yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
All right. Excuse me. Well, thank you, Amanda and Maggie. That was a very interesting talk. It's amazing how much information you guys have gathered over the years. So we'll check the chat. Hopefully we've got some questions in the chat. Okay, here's a question. Have you had any problems with nest overheating during hot weather?
Yeah, we have, we try to move our boxes into the shade, because as you all know, Davis does get very hot during the summer. So we have had some, probably likely heat related death of nestlings, but we try to do our best to avoid that. We also face our boxes east so that they stay cooler, when we can.
Okay, oh, I'm sorry, hang on. Okay. We have some comments, great talk. Here's a question. Do the nest get parasites and lose nestlings?
Yes. So we get a few different types of parasites. We do get a brood parasite every so often, the cowbird. It's not super common, and we've only had a couple. I think we only had one successful cowbird, but we've had a few eggs from cowbirds that have been laid, and we can identify them and remove them. But we also do get blowflies, which are pretty gross. They're just like little maggot type things that attach to the skin of the birds and then suck their blood. But when we check the boxes every week, we remove all the blowflies, and we're pretty good at like looking for the parasites. And then we sometimes our tree swallows will get mites, so they're little tiny blood-sucking insects that also swarm our boxes, but we will treat those boxes with diatomaceous earth, which can help remove the mites from the boxes.
Okay. Let's see, another question. Are you interested in populations in our private nest boxes near the highway?
We are interested. We if like is this for like if you have like a box like by your house, or can you clarify? Yes, okay. If you have bluebirds that nest in your box, I'm sure we'd be happy to get out there and ban them if you would like. We've been banning a lot of bluebirds around town, so yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Do you see house sparrows murdering native nest box inhabitants in every site?
Not on every site. They tend to be more common on some sites than others. I think last year we didn't have any house sparrows though, which is great. The year before at Dry Creek, one of our sites on private property, we did have some house sparrows try to re-nest a few times and had to evict them several times. But no house sparrow murders that we know of, which is good.
Okay. Okay. Do you have any plans to install additional boxes?
Right now we're pretty maxed out with 200 boxes. If like the dream would be to expand, of course, but there's only so much the two of us can do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Here's one on housekeeping. Do you ever clean out the boxes or just leave them alone?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we clean out the boxes. We do like a pre-season clean, where we get all of the extra bird poop and rat nests and grossness out before the birds start nesting. And then after the birds start nesting, as soon as their chicks fledge from the nest, we clean out the nest. Because usually it has a lot of like bird poop in it, and we take all that out. But if the nest is abandoned for any reason, and the nest still looks like it's in good condition, we'll leave it in the box because another bird can reuse it.
Okay. And I've always wondered, do birds clean out a natural cavity when they come back to nest?
They don't. They re-nest on top of the old nesting material, but there's something to do with the natural cavity versus in a nest box, where if you leave a nest in a nest box, the rate of like parasitism is higher from like nest insects and things. So it's better for nest boxes to clean them out.
Okay. Let's see. The person who asked about the boxes in private yards, so they're going to contact you. So look out for that. And then there was a comment that pretty much I think summarizes the whole, I think, takeaway for this is that Thank you for this overview. Great to see the big picture of this program after seeing so many boxes in the parks.
Thank
Oh.
you.
Thanks.
Okay, I don't see any more questions in already. Lots of thanks, and appreciation for the talk. So any last question or questions? Okay, if not. Amanda and Maggie, thank you again so much for spending the time with us tonight and bringing us up to date on, after 25 years, what's going on with the Nestbox Highway. So
you for
thank you
having
very
me.
much.
Thank you.
And everyone, thank you for joining us tonight. Next month, we will have a talk on the Audubon, California Kern River Preserve on their projects. I don't know the exact topic yet. And in May, John Sterling will talk to us about Bhutan. Don't ask me how to spell it, please. But I think it's in Southeast Asia. And so we hope to see you then. And again, thank you all. Thank you, Amanda and excuse me, and Maggie. Wonderful talk, and I like your antlers. So anyway, good night, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.